Welcome to The Rebel, the podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Michael Dargy. On this episode, I've invited playwright, self-proclaimed troublemaker, and fearless creator, Rebecca Northan, onto the show to talk about everything from growing up in Calgary's Northeast to creating a one-woman show that's traveled the world called Blind Date, and the two opposing philosophies that brought it all together. That and so much more. Welcome to The Rebel. Well, I'm sitting here at a very respectable social distance. I'm in
very Canadian social distance,
an entire country away, and sitting across from me somewhere in the east. And I'm not even sure where. Are you in Toronto right now? Or are you
currently in Stratford?
In Stratford, very nice. Please welcome to the show, Rebecca Northan.
Hi.
So Rebecca, I'm going to let you sort of do your own, introduction about who you are and what you are. But I will say this, that Rebecca is probably one of the most fearless creators I've ever met in my entire life. And I'm just so privileged and grateful to have you on the show. I can't wait to share, your story with the world of the Rebel podcast. Rebecca, thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. I don't know how to do my own intro. The first thing that came to my mind when you said that is, hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm just some jackass you've never met.
Troublemaker
brat.
Yeah.
And I'm recently adding jackass.
I like it. But so you created something way back in the day called Kung Fu Panties, which was a stage show. So you produce stagecraft, everything from improvisational or spontaneous theater. Your company is called Spontaneous Theater, as well as some undiscovered Shakespeare stuff with the Stratford Festival.
Yeah, which also for my brain falls under the Spontaneous Theater umbrella.
Oh, great.
And I've also done scripted plays, both for myself and commissions for other companies, but usually in the comedic vein.
Yeah. So let me backtrack and, how did you get here? You've got a long and storied career in theater and arts and doing stuff that is, quite frankly, for most people, terrifying. You invite people up on stage when it was allowed, and assuming we'll get to go there again.
Yeah, I hope so.
in a play that, can I call it a play? Blind Date?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's famously toured around the world. It's been off Broadway. So maybe let's start there. How did you get to there, Rebecca?
Well, I was born in Calgary.
Yay!
Yeah. I grew up in Rundle in the Northeast, which means don't cross me.
Oh, yeah.
We grow them tough in the Northeast, resilient. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend in junior high that had started volunteering at this really strange theater company called the Loose Moose Theater. And it was at the time in the 80s, the only theater in Northeast Calgary, hidden up by the Portical Inn, just, not too far from the airport. Who puts a theater up there? It sort of got round to me that they were looking for high school theater sports teams. So by then I was in high school. And so I put a theater sports team together and got to go up to the Moose and take a weekend class and then be in their high school theater sports tournament. So that changed everything. That blew my head off. I was supposed to be grounded at that time. And I begged my mom. I told her she could double my grounding if I could only be allowed out once a week to go to Loose Moose.
Double your grounding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how, everything about that place, like every fiber of my being said, I need to be here. I need to be at Loose Moose. That kind of I would say that got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I feel like my whole career really, I owe it to Keith Johnstone and Dennis Cahill and the Loose Moose.
Yeah. What is your, okay, first of all, what were you grounded for?
I told my mom that I was sleeping over at a friend's house, and she told her mom she was sleeping at my house, and we went to a party and we stayed out all night. And because I was a very elaborate teenage liar, the next morning I phoned from a payphone from a downtown C train station.
Oh my God.
And said, "Oh, hi, we're just waking up. I'm just calling to let you know we're going to have breakfast." And because you got to continue the narrative, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
We're just going to have breakfast and then I'll head home. And there was this pause and my mom said, "You're caught." And I said, "What?" And she said, "You're caught. Get home now." And she hung up on me.
Oh my God. That would make my entire insides just turn to liquid.
It did. It was the worst. It was the longest C train ride home. And I was grounded for 3 months. And I was actually, when I found out what happened to my friend, her punishment was 1,000 times worse.
Really? What happened?
Her parents took her bedroom door off. They said, "Look, obviously we can't trust you, so you don't get any more privacy." They took her bedroom door away for a month. And I was like, woo, I'm lucky. I got off 3 months grounding, no bedroom door. Wow. When you're a 15 or 16-year-old girl, can you imagine?
No, that's
Nightmare.
terrifying.
Yeah. In retrospect, I look back and I go, "God, that's such a brilliant punishment."
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Anyhow, that was why I was grounded. But I had just right before that had done this high school theater sports tournament, and so when the possibility of not going to Loose Moose every Sunday to play theater sports was threatened, I lost my mind.
Yeah. Wow.
And negotiated for double the grounding if I could be allowed out once but that's how desperately I wanted to be there.
Yeah. Well, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I was taking classes from Keith back then, and I never got on stage. Like I don't know why I didn't, but it's terrifying. Going on stage on some level is terrifying. It's not normal for anyone to want to get up in front of a group of other humans and be looked at. Yeah, maybe. A friend of mine and another guest on the show named Michael McAdam, he actually we were taking classes together, and he was in Mutiny on the Bounty. And wow. I thought about going for that as well, but I chickened out back then. It's like so many regrets.
You mean, Dargy, I could have met you like 25 years ago?
Yeah. Has it been 25 years?
It's been longer. It's been longer. Yeah, because I'm coming up on having been improvising for like 33 years. I think I'm coming up on that. I know, that's crazy.
Well, okay, so let's just sort of jump from there to your career. So, I mean, if it starts there, if that's like the birthplace of the Rebecca Northan that we know, what has happened along the way for you?
Oh my God, my mind just went blank. Nothing's happened. What did I do? I eventually got ungrounded. I went to the University of Calgary. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So I balanced out my improv education with a more formal, acting / theater degree. But I also, while I was there, really also found a love of Shakespeare. Oh. So that really kicked off for me this kind of like two-prong, or I don't know what, the two sides of me, which is like loving improvisation, but also really loving language and the structure that comes with Shakespeare. And the other thing is, my two favorite professors, Keith Johnstone was at the university then, and my Shakespeare professor, Pamela Brooke, had their office doors side by side.
Oh my God.
And Pamela had a quote from Hamlet on her door, which said, "The readiness is all." And Keith, in response, put up a quote on his door that said, "Don't be prepared." And if I ever were to, get words tattooed on my body, one arm would say "the readiness is all," and the other one would say "don't be prepared." And I've kind of I really try to sit in the middle of those two things. And I think my work in what I call spontaneous theater is the synthesis of those two doors side by side.
Isn't that wild?
Isn't that wild? Who knew?
Yeah. God.
Be careful what you read as a young person, because it could shape the way you think.
Right? It could change your life.
It could change your life.
I just find that fascinating, that the dichotomy between those two doors, and in the middle sits Rebecca.
Mm-hmm. In that little crack between the two doors.
reconciling these two huge thoughts.
Yeah.
Huh. Mm-hmm. What was the first play you ever produced?
Albert Howell and Graham Davies and I did a show at Loose Moose. I mean, self-producing was a natural extension of being at Loose Moose.
Yeah.
Because Dennis, the artistic director there, at some point, basically made it clear that as a company member, if you had an idea for a show, you could pitch him and he would ask you questions and, mentor you. And if it seemed like an okay idea, then he would say, okay, you can have the theater and give it a go.
Amazing.
So I think I was 19 the first time I produced a show, and it was called Don't Tell Your Parents. And that was with Albert Howell and Graham Davies. Yeah. And that we improvised a full length 1-act play based on lines of dialogue that we got the audience to write. So if you can imagine a 90-minute line of dialogue scene, and for anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, you just say to the audience, on these slips of paper, write something someone would say to someone else, and you fold them up.
Yeah.
So the improvisers can't see them. You sprinkle them on the stage, and throughout you just choose them at random. You have to act as though that's what you meant to say. So we would pick the first line of dialogue would be the title of the play. Amazing. And then we would just go and we would improvise for 90 minutes. So we did. So, and then I think a couple of nights we also said to the audience, like, what's a fairy tale that you really loved growing up? And then we would take that as the suggestion, but we would improvise a really adult version.
Oh my God.
Of like, we did some really unacceptable versions of fairy tales. Really fun. So dirty.
Do you think that theater now is as daring as it used to be? Do you think we've lost something along the way, or? Oh
my gosh. I'm not sure. I mean, it's also been a year now that I haven't even really seen any theater.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly we're growing up, right? I hope we're growing up as a society, and we're developing more empathy and care for each other. So if that means that the ground of, especially in comedy, right, of like what's funny and what isn't, is always changing. That's always changing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know that it's more or less daring. I mean, the next most daring thing is just going to be going back inside of a theater together.
Right. Just being an audience member.
Yes,
actually.
Just being an audience member is going to be the riskiest thing that anyone's going to do in the next 3 years. So that's I think what's considered daring also changes over time. So right. I don't know.
All right.
It's a really vague non-answer.
Well, I think it was a weird question to ask because it's pretty open-ended. What has been your favorite production that you've either co-created or have created?
Well, Kung Fu Panties was ridiculously fun, and that came out of my daydream of always wanting to be cast in an action movie.
Yeah.
I'm going, this isn't going to happen.
Just make my own.
But it actually started out as a 10-minute script for the 10-minute play festival,
right,
in Calgary that Ground Zero Theatre used to produce. And I think we were given, 3 disparate elements, and you had 24 hours to write a script, cast your actors, rehearse it, and then come in and perform it.
Oh my God. And
so I wrote this 10-15-minute script for myself and my 2 girlfriends to do. About these kind of like Charlie's Angels, these 3 lady spies who've kidnapped a diplomat, and they've met in the boiler room of the hotel where they've kidnapped him. They've each been in disguise, as chambermaids and things like that. And so they bring this this guy's got a bag on his head and he's tied up, and part of the plan is now we take off our chambermaid uniforms, et cetera, and we give them to one of the women, and she incinerates the evidence. And then, so we're all in our underwear, and then she comes out and we're like, so where are our getaway clothes? And she's completely forgotten to bring them. So now the three of us are in the basement of this hotel, stuck in our underwear with like a diplomatic kidnapping going on. And then he ends up escaping, and we have to fight him in our underwear. Like, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. But it's a little bit, you know, a tongue-in-cheek comment on when you watch an action movie, there's always ladies in their underwear for no good reason.
Right.
And we didn't win the competition. However, there were a lot of audience members that were so enthralled and said that this has to be a full-length play. And so the artistic director of Ground Zero, Ryan Looney, said, yeah, I want to commission you. I was like, are you serious? Okay.
Wow. Amazing. How long was that run?
Oh gosh, I think we ran it for 3 weeks or a month.
Wow.
And it's the only play that I've ever done where people stole our posters. The poster went into the marquee, and the next day that we came in, someone had tried to pry the marquee open. Like, it was damaged because someone tried to steal when does that happen? Who steals theater posters? Nobody.
Arrived.
That's right. Yeah. So that was pretty great. And that was the best shape I was ever in my life, because, you know, there were, I think, 9 or 10 fights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Blind Date is certainly one of my favorite productions I've seen.
Thanks.
Just because it's so honest, and it's so amazing the way that you and your other Mimis take care of the people on stage. But it's got to be initially, and I did say that you are a fearless creator at the beginning of this, but I also know that there must have been some fear to be like, oh God, what have I done?
Oh, so much fear.
Inviting somebody who's never been on stage before, just a regular person, to like have this date, and, you know, how it can go right or how it can go wrong. Like, how did you navigate that to turn it into this global phenomenon?
Completely by accident, you know, and similar to Kung Fu Panties, it also started out as a 10-minute piece. So there was this touring venue called the Spiegel Tent, which just means tent of mirrors, that was in Toronto for World Stage Festival, I think in like 2007 or something like that. And I was asked to create a 10-minute piece for it. Didn't know what I was going to do, but the whole show that they were producing was very sort of sexy, adult, burlesque variety show.
Yeah.
Had this like adult circus feel. And then I thought, there's no clown. I'll do something. What about a sexy French clown?
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get an audience member to make out with me, which I have to say, like, in a COVID age, the fact that even it just seems insane. No, but there you go. Wasn't thinking about viruses back then.
Yeah.
And so it ran as a 10-minute piece, a very successful 10-minute piece in that show for a whole summer. And so by the end of the summer, I thought, I'm going to go back to Calgary to Loose Moose and talk with Dennis and say, how do we expand this into a show? What if we took the time to get to know this stranger that I'm making out with? And I had a couple of meetings with Dennis where I was talking about ideas. And then this is one of the things I love about Dennis. He was like, no more conversation. I want you to go on stage on Friday night in the middle of whatever, Maestro or Gorilla or something, and bring the character out and bring someone on stage and improvise.
What?
He's like, no, don't make me improvise. I just want to keep discussing. And I think he said, just see how long you can sustain it for. Let's make no promises.
Yeah.
And I think I went for 45 minutes. So it probably wasn't during an actual Moose show, because that would be outrageous. But the very first time out went for 45 minutes. And at the end, came off stage high, didn't remember anything.
Yeah.
Thank God Dennis was there taking notes. And he was like, I think there's something here. And the other thing is, when you take the idea out on stage and try it out, You discover immediately the ideas that you had that were too clever and aren't going to work, like immediately.
That's one of the things I love about improvisation, and especially on the Loose Moose Theater, is realizing that moment when you're just I'm definitely trying to be too clever here. Just be honest, just be real. Right.
How many times do we need to get that lesson? Apparently constantly.
Yeah, forever it seems.
And I have to say, like over the arc of the development of Blind Date, the amazing discovery and rediscovery is that the more honest that lead clown character is, the better. Like more truth, more vulnerability, more truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. How has it been training other Mimis?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy in that the other people, and we have men and women now, because we have a queer version of Blind Date as well. Those lead clowns are incredibly talented actors and improvisers. And one of the things I have now learned to say is, okay, we're going to rehearse and we're going to bring in guest volunteers to practice on in rehearsal. Yeah. But there's nothing that I can say to you that will actually prepare you for the first time that you do Blind Date in front of an audience with a total stranger.
Wow.
And I would say 90% of them come off stage after their first performance and burst into tears.
Like happy tears or oh God tears?
Everything.
Or just all the emotions.
all of the emotions. Because the first big discovery was, as the performer, you're terrified because you think, oh my gosh, I'm about to do this big thing, and you're really nervous.
Yeah.
But then the moment you bring that civilian up on stage, your energetic system tells you immediately that person is 1,000 times more scared than you.
Right.
So it really is your job to take care of them.
Yeah.
And what's great about it is when you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, they're more scared than me, I have to take care of them. That pushes your own fear like right out of the way. Wow. So it's an incredibly rewarding show to do. And it's become a practice, I guess. You hear that as improvisers in your improv classes all the time. Take care of your partner. Yeah. But we don't do a lot of discussion of like, well, what does that mean exactly? How do you take care of them? And what I've learned through doing Blind Date with a civilian is the first thing is just shut up and listen. Like really listen.
Yeah.
Give them your full attention. I thought before I started doing Blind Date, I thought I was a pretty good listener, because that's also part of being a scripted actor, right? It's all about listening, they say to you. And it wasn't until I started performing with a non-performer that I realized to give another human being 100% of your focus, really listen, take them in, is exhausting. So that was a real lesson in presence and listening.
Yeah.
That I thought I'd mastered. Ego.
Sucker.
Yeah.
You don't know.
No.
Well, and I want to say that this it must have led somewhat to Legend Has It. And,
entirely.
And Undercover. Like it sort of spun off a genre, really. Yeah.
That's all because we were doing the show in Winnipeg, and this woman, I think we had her son-in-law was the date that night.
Yeah. So
they stuck around. I think it was actually a matinee, and they stuck around to chat. And she said to me very directly, "What do you call this style of theater?" And I said, "What? It's improv." And she said, "No, it isn't. Yes, you're improvising." She said, "But it's something else. Oh. And you need to find your own name for it." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Find your own name for it, because once you give it a name, then you can start teaching it to other people." Like, who is this lady?
To just drop down onto the planet. Boink. Here you go, Rebecca.
Kind of. Blind Date has had a lot of those oddly like ladies over 60 showing up and kind of pointing fingers at me at the perfect moment to say, "Hey, get focused. There's something magic going on here. And so that was this lady, but that sparked a discussion amongst us as a cast of, okay, well, what is this?
Yeah.
It's not just improv because it's structured.
Yeah.
We do think of it as a play, but it's not a scripted play. So, and meantime, while we were performing it, there were also a lot of people from the mainstream theater world that would come and see it and say, that was great. It's not real theater, but it's great. Over time, we came up with this idea of it being spontaneous theater. And for us, the name spontaneous theater put a foot on either side of structure and spontaneity.
Oh,
the readiness is all, don't be prepared. Keeps coming back.
Oh my God, I love that so much. Huh.
Yeah, so there was this day that I was up in Edmonton for their theater awards because Blind Date had been nominated for a Sterling. And this director up there, this great director named Ron Jenkins, came up and he was like, hey, I got a question for you. How come such and such a theater company's never programmed Blind Date? I was like, well, I'm in Calgary, right? I was like, well, Blind Date always happens at Loose Moose in Calgary. So that's why. But he got me thinking. So as I was taking, the Red Arrow back home from Edmonton to Calgary, and the Red Arrow stops across the street from the Center of Performing Arts. By the time the Red Arrow pulled in, I was like, I'm going to go pitch an idea. And so I got off the bus and walked into Alberta Theatre Projects and went to Vanessa Porteous, the artistic director at the time, and said, hey, I want to pitch you something for the Playwrights Festival, something kind of improvised, maybe the audience can be involved. Anyway, whatever. I pitched her some terrible idea. And she said, I would be more interested if you took what you've learned in Blind Date and created something new based on that. Brilliant. Can you believe it? I was like, wow, she really turned artistic directing into a verb. She really artistic directed me.
Yeah.
Because I had some other improv based idea, but it had not occurred to my little brain to build on what I've done before. And so she said, go away and think about it and come back in a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So I came back in a week and said, okay, well, based on Blind Date and working with an audience, because I really had to double check. I was like, are you really saying you want me to create something that brings another audience member up on stage? And she said, yeah, but expand on the idea.
Wow.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. So I came back and said, well, what about the idea of a fantasy adventure family show where anyone from a 10-year-old up to an adult could be brought on stage to be the hero that has to save a world that's in peril? And she was like, great, let's do it.
Amazing.
That's a mainstream Canadian theater saying yes to an improvised play. Incredible, unheard of.
Yeah.
And so that launched Legend Has It. And that was really a ton of fun. And we ended up going back to ATP for a second time as their holiday family show. And we took that show to the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York. And
amazing.
I know.
But okay. So I need to unpack something you said earlier, that you got off the Red Arrow, went across the street and pitched an idea.
Okay.
Who does that?
Me.
What gives you the right Rebecca Northan to have an idea and go, share it with somebody? Like that to me is the interesting part of that story.
Yeah, I think I have one of my mantras through my career has been the worst anyone will say is no. It costs me nothing to pitch an idea. Not really. Right. And I always think of it too as I'm just throwing spaghetti at a wall here and let's see if it sticks.
Right. It doesn't have to be perfect.
No, no, not at all. And in fact, that's a great example of I threw some spaghetti and it just slid down the wall. And Vanessa was like, something different.
She reaches to the wall, just
yeah. Not this one. Not this one. Yeah. So and it's something that I try to impart to my students as well is just ask. Huh. Just ask. And so the other thing is tied into that is, and I'll get a little bit sort of spiritual and metaphysical with you. When I was 23, my mother passed away of cancer. She died at home. So my brother and I were with her at her bedside. And the moment that she died was very clear. And of course, then we all kind of turned away. Her best friend was there as well. So there were 3 of us, and we all kind of turned away from each other and we were sobbing. And I had an out-of-body experience. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, curled over, bent over, my head in my hands, just, massive waves of grief and loss. And I literally felt myself leave my body through the back of my neck. I could see us around her body in her bedroom. Then it was like I went through the roof. I could see my house and my neighborhood. Hello, Rundle. Up, saw the whole city of Calgary. And then everything went black and quiet and really still. And I got this message, which was, you can have anything that you want. The only thing that will stop you is your own fear. Got it? And I remember thinking, got it. And slam, I was back in my body at the side of the bed.
Wow.
And so, I would love to say that, and ever since that day, I have no fear. Not true. I have fear all the time, and I forget that message on a regular basis. But it got in there somewhere. And when I do remember it, it's helpful. It helps me go, I'm afraid right now, but you know what? Whatever. Proceed. I'm not going to die from pitching an idea.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Was that too TMI?
No, that was amazing. Just, somebody picked you up metaphysically by the scruff of the neck. It was like, listen, tonk.
Well, my mom's best friend, I told her about it the next day, and she was just like, oh, that was your mom. That was your mom. You went with your mom halfway. Her spirit took it. I was like, well, I don't know. Let's not be crazy, Marilyn.
Wow. During COVID, because we've been unable to perform the way we normally would perform, you've spun off some ways to deal with this. You did Mimi Live for a while.
I did on the YouTube. On the
YouTubes. And I think people can see that at spontaneoustheater.com. Is that right?
No. I have the most disorganized digital life. It's just kind of like, it literally looks like a messy teenager's bedroom. You have to go to the YouTube channel, which is Spontaneous Theater Canada.
Gotcha. Okay. Go there, because there are all the episodes that are there for people to watch.
Yeah. And Mimi Live is in a way is different from Blind Date. We're not really doing, that's why I called it Mimi Live. It's kind of in conversation with that character. Normally I would never do anything with other actors, but for Mimi Live, it's all with other actors, but they all agreed to be themselves.
Oh, that's great.
Be themselves. That was the rule for Mimi Live was with the guest, no acting on your part. And the rule was, we're not going to talk about your career.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That must have been really relaxing, actually, for other actors to just let that shit go.
Well, the kind of actors that say yes, absolutely. Colin Mockery is there, and Wayne Brady's there, and my friend Tony Napa, and like some really great adventurous guys, Andrew Fung from Loose Moose. Kevin Hammond, who I adore. But there are some actors that I approached that said the number one rule is we don't talk about your career. It's all about your own truth. And they were like, nope, no, thank you. Too exposed. No. So
interesting.
We respect that. Yeah.
How have sidewalk scenes been evolving?
So the pandemic hit, and initially we all thought like, oh, great, 6 weeks off, and then we'll be back to work.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of kept extending. And I am not good at being idle.
What?
So 2 things immediately came to my mind. I think it was probably in around April or May of 2020. I had read an article that a drive-in movie theater in Winnipeg had been allowed to open. And I thought, the minute that Ontario is open drive-in movie theaters.
Yeah.
I'm going to do drive-in theater somewhere.
Right.
People can stay in their cars safe. We can perform outside. We'll figure out the volume thing later.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that had occurred to me. And then the other one was, there've been plagues before and actors found a way. Yeah. So sidewalk scenes, the idea for sidewalk scenes was that your front porch is the new front row.
Oh, that's nice.
So you stay on your front porch and we will perform curbside. We don't even come on your property.
Yeah.
And that came about because there had been this really weird, I don't know how it was in Alberta, but Doug Ford's government, as they started to do the weird different tier whatever opening, right? There was this, they announced that, when the time comes, this first level of opening will be that your nanny, your cook, or your groundskeeper will be allowed to come back to your property. It was okay, do you have the epitome of privilege that you're just outlining. You're just publicly outlining it as some sort of COVID policy. But I saw that and I went, there's my in. There's my in. So first of all, I'll do you one better. I won't even come on your property. Yeah. We discussed as a little troupe of performers, we were like, well, if we always keep a little spade and some gardening gloves and a little, plant like daisies or something, if we ended the show by digging a hole in the boulevard and planting some daisies, we're in the clear.
Yeah, check that box.
Theatrical gardening by sidewalk scenes. We had a good chuckle about that. We never followed through on it, but whenever that first round of openings happened, we had already, by then, a friend of mine built me a website, and we had this little menu where you could order live music or live improv or a kid show, and we would come and perform for you.
Outstanding.
And it turned into this incredible community building experience because, one house would book us, we would come. But of course, the neighbors would hear shouting. And so suddenly people are kind of creeping out onto their porches and, with glasses of wine and going, what's going on? And we were saying, well, Tim and Irene booked us. Do you guys not know each other? Oh, let us introduce you to your neighbors. That happened a few times. Because, the invention of central air conditioning means that neighbors don't know each other anymore, not the same way that they used to.
Yeah.
So that happened. And we even had a woman that booked us follow up with us and say, we thought we were doing you local artists a favor by booking you. And I said, well, you were. Yeah. And she said, but since you've been here, the feeling on our street has completely changed. We say hello to neighbors that we've never spoken to before. I was like, that's the magic of theater. That's what we wanted to do.
Yes.
And we had a recurring booking through the summer at a seniors apartment building. They would turn off the fountain in front of the building. So we would perform in front of the fountain and they would all come out on their balconies.
Oh my God.
So that was like being in an opulent theater where you're like, oh, look, our theater is 5 stories high. And the acoustics were great because the building wrapped around.
Outstanding.
And so that kept us really busy. And somewhere in the middle of us running around town performing in front of people's homes, we also launched a 4-person Romeo and Juliet that happened in a parking garage because we could fit 11 cars in an oval. So we performed in the round.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so.
And that was super fun because, Romeo and Juliet actually takes place during a plague.
Right.
The whole reason that the teen suicides happen is because there's a letter that never gets delivered by this small role. It's this friar who eventually comes back to Friar Lawrence and says, sorry, I couldn't deliver your letter because I got quarantined. I got shut up in a plague house. They thought that I had been exposed. So I got quarantined. So we just set our Romeo and Juliet in Stratford during COVID. We made sure that there was no kissing. But suddenly, Romeo and Juliet just touching hands the first time they met. And then the nurse was, there with hand sanitizer. sanitizer going, get away from each other.
Yeah. Wow.
Really fun. Had a whole new resonance.
Right.
Yeah.
Holy. So let's jump into Undiscovered Shakespeare for a sec.
Okay. That's another one of me. Like, who do you think you are, Rebecca? Just pitching an idea.
Right. To the Stratford Festival. So I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago. Blind Date was up and running and touring around. Other ladies were doing it. Legend has it had a development and a run. And literally I was at home middle of the day and I thought, what's the next hardest thing? It would be really hard to try to improvise in iambic pentameter. How would I combine that with, following Vanessa's advice? How do you build on what you learned before? And so without thinking it through too much, I sent an email to the head of new play development at the Stratford Festival, this lovely man, Bob White, who used to be at ATP. So I've known him since I was 16. And I said, hey, Bob, I have a crazy idea. If there's a spontaneous theater trilogy that consists of Blind Date and Legend Has It, which is a fantasy adventure, it seems to be the next most hardest, daring thing would be for us to take an audience member's real life love story and turn it into an undiscovered Shakespeare play that we then improvise in real time. And there were some other clever ideas thrown in there, like we'll have the audience member be in it with us and see if we can get them to speak in iambic pentameter. What a stupid idea. But, and so I just sent off that email without thinking, I didn't want to give myself time to backtrack. So there you go. And then I think the next day Bob said, let's do it. And then I thought, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? So we had a 5-day workshop of the idea. Yeah. Which ended there was no performance. There was just kind of a sharing of here's a couple of the things we'd worked on. And at the end of that 5 days, Bob said, I think there's something here that we should keep exploring. Come back next season. Wow. So we came back the next season, worked on it a bit more, got it up on its feet, did a couple of, again, closed performances where we got audience members to be in it with us and they didn't speak the entire time. And we're like, well, this is not taking care of them if they're not speaking. We're just kind of dragging them through a play like a giant prop. But the discovery there was, I as an improviser am terrified to speak in iambic pentameter. Oh my God. Yeah. Why would an accountant ever open their mouth? So we went back to the drawing board and went, okay, so they're not going to be in it. And anyway, that's just part of the development. But the Stratford Festival just kept saying, yes, come back again, work on it more. Wow. And they started to really support us with, well, here's a text coach for you. And here's a movement coach so that you can learn Elizabethan dances and incorporate that into it. Yeah. That's like
the
Stratford Festival. True.
Yeah. It's like being at the Disneyland of theater. They have an incredible education department here that's available to the company to continue honing their skills. Wow. Yeah. So we were meant to, and I really take my hat off to the Stratford Festival and Anthony Cimolino, the artistic director. I'm putting words in his mouth. My guess would be that improv is not his cup of tea. Right. But he also saw that there's something here that the audiences, because we did start to open it up in a workshop way to public audiences. So there's something there that people are responding to. And it is Shakespeare-adjacent, I guess. Right. That's my phrase. And so thematically, there's a place for it here. Right. And we started to get feedback from audience members that said, I didn't really understand a 5-act structure until I saw what you guys are doing. And now I'm seeing the Shakespeare productions in a different way. And oh my God, we as performers, this was a blow. Going back to those 2 doors, what we discovered as we started to really deep dive into iambic pentameter, 10 beats per line, da-dun, 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 da-dun. To speak that way on purpose, and I'm not even going to try doing it right now, but to speak that way on purpose in a spontaneous way when you become hyper-focused on that structure, you can only be in the moment.
Right.
You actually cannot think beyond 10 beats, because the moment you project into the future, the structure falls apart.
Wow. And
that is a discovery that I did not anticipate. So back to the two doors, structure and spontaneity, structure and spontaneity, they might be inseparable.
Right.
Maybe. Does that make sense what I'm saying about
100%
how the iambic pentameter forces you to only be in the moment? Yeah. And as an improviser, I didn't see that coming.
What are the 5 things that people need to know?
Wash your hands. No, about what?
Anything. Yeah. This is like the non sequitur, I want to jump from, because that was a great lesson, right? Build that structure and be prepared for anything, but live in that moment.
Yeah.
So if there are 5 things that you wish people would know, just in general, could be about making pie. I don't know. What would those 5 things be?
Feel the fear, do it anyway.
Like it.
Make your partner look good. These are all improv things. Yeah, make your partner look good. Oh my God, find ways to laugh always. In the middle of my mom dying of cancer, like we laughed a lot. We laughed a lot. And you have to, at least our family has to. We are a family with a very dark sense of humor. How many is that?
That's 3.
I'm glad you're counting.
I'll probably listen back and be like, oh shit, Darby.
She said 4. 7. I couldn't shut her up. What else do people really need to know? Yeah, cry a little bit once a week. I think that's important. You got to let that out. Yeah. Your tears, that's eye barfing. You'll feel better afterwards.
Eye barfing. That's going to be the title of this episode.
Eye barfing. Yeah. I know forever I've said, like, if we told teenage boys that crying was eye barfing, they'd all feel fine about it.
Yeah.
But man, I was so sad yesterday. I just spent an hour barfing out my eyes. Cool. Yeah. And invest in your chosen family.
Oh, so that might not be your family.
It might not be your family. Yeah. I mean, they might be part of your chosen family, but there might be some other folks in there too.
Yeah.
I have a pretty great circle of friends, many of whom I met at Loose Moose 30 years ago. And Matt, they feel like family. There's something happens to you when you get up on stage and improvise with someone over an extended period of time. It's sort of like, you face the unknown together,
right,
in front of an audience. It bonds you, like soldiers. You've shared a traumatic experience together in public.
PTSD is post-theater
syndrome. Yeah.
Syndrome. Yeah.
Post-theater stress disorder.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What's your, I'm going to assume, I might be wrong, but what is your favorite book?
I'm guilty of not having been reading lately I can't concentrate anymore since the pandemic. My favorite book?
Yeah. Maybe when you're a kid, I used to love the Mad Scientist Club. I don't know why. That was just the thing that I read when I was a kid.
Well, when I was a kid, I inherited all of my mom's Trixie Belden books. And Trixie Belden, I loved Nancy Drew as a kid. Yeah. But Nancy Drew was 17, 18 years old in all of those books. Trixie Belden is 12 in the first book.
Yeah.
And ages. And so, and I loved anything set in the 50s as a kid. Super weird little kid. Wow. So yeah, Trixie Belden as a kid. For sure.
Trixie Belden.
Girl detective. Yeah.
What your one of your top or your favorite movies of all time?
Wizard of Oz.
Oh, the old. I don't know if there was a new one.
There better not be. There's discussion that they're going to remake the Wizard of Oz, and I absolutely will not attend. And we don't need to improve on perfection. The Wizard of Oz, I remember seeing it when I was 3.5. I know it was before my brother was born. And I remember being so terrified of the witch that I watched the movie from under a blanket on the floor, and I would hide when the witch would come, but also peek out at the same time. But The Wizard of Oz, all through my teenage years, because I bought it on VHS, anytime I was depressed, I would just put on The Wizard of Oz, and by 25 minutes in, my mood would be infinitely improved.
Wow. Did you have a favorite character?
Well, I was kind of in love with the Scarecrow.
Oh, okay.
I think I loved them all. And then, you know, what's super weird. So when I was at Loose Moose, the three guys at the theater, like the sort of senior improvisers that I was closest to, were Hashim Nasser and Albert Howell and Ray Gurry. And if you ever meet the three of them,
Ray's the lion, right?
Yes. Ray Gurry's the Cowardly Lion, and Albert is the Tin Man, and Hashim is the Scarecrow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I was clearly obsessed with The Wizard of Oz for a while, but the three of them, especially when you get them in a room together, you go, oh yeah, there they are.
Yeah. God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, what is the most meaningful theater you've ever seen? Not been in, but seen.
I'll tell you, recently, In and of Itself, which is available on Crave. And I don't want to say anything more about it. And if you don't know anything, do not Google it. Do not Google it. Just go on Crave and watch In and of Itself. You're welcome. I've watched it 4 times. I was recently teaching at the National Theatre School and was like, okay, everybody, gather around. You must watch this show, and we will discuss. And it's one of those shows that I have since seen people discussing, you know, is it theater though? And I think, oh, fuck off. Yes, it happened in a theater. There was an audience and a performer. Like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. In and of Itself. Okay.
Yes.
Done. We will watch that this weekend.
I want to hear your review of it afterwards.
Okay.
I so want to say things to you right now, but I'm not going to. I don't want to rob you of the virgin experience.
I'm so excited. Okay. Yeah. I'll just put that in a box and I'll unpack that this weekend. Mm-hmm. There are people out there that are maybe they're grounded. And
if they're living an exciting life and they're under the age of 18, I hope they are grounded.
But maybe there's people that are perhaps, and you know, let's put COVID aside for a moment. They're either maybe trying to do something new creatively. They're trying to explore something new for themselves. Maybe they're trying to start a new business. What advice would you give to these people that I call rebels in waiting to help them get there? Yeah,
you just got to do it. You just have to start. Yeah. And to borrow again from the improv world, you've got to fail forward. It is the fastest way to learn something new, is just get out there, start trying it, you know, get on your bike, get on your 2-wheeler for the first time and fall down and scrape your knees. Yeah. There has to be experimentation and failure. And I always think, for me, a new creative idea, and that can be literally creative in the sense of, like, for me, creating a new piece of theater, but also business. I have a very hard time in my mind separating business from creativity. Yeah. Like, I would definitely call myself a creative entrepreneur. I've also been known to call myself a creative capitalist because there's no shame in making money. And that is that any idea that occurs to you is a hypothesis. Oh, I have this idea, but the only way for you to know if it's going to go is to really, like, go into your laboratory and start mixing chemicals. And I mean, we hope it doesn't blow up in your face, but if it does, you're going to learn something really valuable. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant advice. And do it with your friends. Do it with people that you love, that you have a shorthand with, who get you, that you can jam with. Yeah. Who will also challenge you, who also say, like, wait a minute, is that a good idea? You're being an idiot right now. Right. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the show. I just enjoy the hell out of you. Oh, well, you know, that's a 2-way street. Yeah. Oh, can I say one more thing to the rebels in waiting? Yes, please. The other one is have a really wide umbrella of what you think success is. Oh. So back when I was in university, there were some folks that all they wanted to do was be a professional actor, and all they wanted to do was maybe work at Stratford or Shaw.
Right.
Two big national companies. These are not terrible goals. But if the target is that small, what happens when you fall outside of it? Right. So this is also something I'll say to creative students when I'm working with them is if your umbrella of creative success includes, sometimes I teach corporate workshops in improvisation. Sometimes I run drama camps in the summer. Sometimes I perform curbside while people sit on their front porch drinking wine. Yeah. Sometimes I street perform. If the shadow that the umbrella called success is big, you can expand as much as possible, then you're always going to feel a little bit okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Stay safe.
You too. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Rebel podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can also support the show and help shine a light on more amazing people doing incredible things by donating at therebelrebelpodcast.com. I'm your host, Michael Dargy. Until next time.